So, welcome to the Podcast Cast. I'm Insuling.
I'm Ark.
And I'm Jarrett.
So, today is the day where we talk about the bad of Exalted. Now, I don't want to beat this dead horse anymore. It is bloated. It is burst. So, I don't just want this to be an hour of us complaining about the same things that so many other people have complained about. I want to look at Exalted as a whole. I want to look at the promise that we were given and how it failed to achieve that promise. This isn't going to be about the all the ugly parts of Exalted. That might be in a different episode. Some of you know what the ugly parts are. You can look them up. It gets gross. But I hope that people walk away from this saying, yeah, Exalted is a bad game. It's so much worse than it deserves to be, though. Because it could have been so much more. I know, Ark, I know you don't have a whole lot of experience in Exalted, but, I mean, we all clearly like it. We're excited to play it. It's just not with this system. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
When we first sat down to be like, okay, let's do a game. Let's do a Exalted game. It's gonna be really fun. Let's try 3E. We looked through the charms and it was just nothing. It was drivel. It didn't make us have that really good feeling you get when you're reading an RPG book and you're really excited to play. It's just like, oh, okay.
Because, this was, again, an experience that we had. Because we're fairly fresh to Exalted. I just last year read my first Exalted book. The thing is, with Exalted, it just kind of, you hear all of the cool stuff in Exalted. You get really excited. And then you take a look at the book, and it just kind of deflates your excitement a little bit. Because, there's so much redundant and unnecessary stuff there that it can kind of okay, so the first book, in third edition, it's a book about basically a little bit about the setting itself and then building and playing solars. That's what the core rule book for third edition is, pretty much. And the thing is, there's several hundred pages of charms, and each individual charm is not even an individual power, it's a tiny piece of a power, and you get multiple charms and connect them together in this kind of obtuse way to get what you want your character to do. And it just, especially for a new player, it's so overwhelming, and I don't know, I didn't know what I was supposed to do, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't even know what I could do. I didn't know what the game designers wanted me to do with the book, and I also didn't know what I wanted to do with my character because I'd never looked at the book before, and so I didn't know what I should be looking for in terms of solars and what their powers are. So it took me watching other podcasts and stories about solars and stuff players have done with them to get a feel for what they were, because I couldn't really grasp the scale and what their abilities are supposed to be until I've seen it in play, because it couldn't really catch that with the immediate, with the system and the book itself.
Yeah, there are hundreds of charms, and even in just the core rulebook, and it's cool. Okay, there's a lot of charms, but most of the charms are redundant, long, and very weak, and what you'll find is, if you're going through the book, head starting in, and just reading through it, you won't know what to do.
Yeah.
The charms are very oh, would this help me do this? Or would this help me do that? No, it's what is this? And is this beneficial? And what I think the charms are mainly supposed to have play in it is picking them and testing it out yourself. But when the system is so bad that you don't want to play it, it just turns into this garbage mess.
Yeah, and now, this is kind of a thing, but we can talk about the system later. But
no,
right now,
we're already there. We might as well. I was just rearranging some of the notes for that, actually, because you guys are making good points.
It's...
Do you guys mind if I just share like a little bit of history with it?
Oh, please do.
Yeah.
So when Exalted came about, it was actually in the same era as 3rd edition D&D. Like 3.5, I think, was around for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and then Exalted hit. So it was close enough to that era where I think that when Exalted was still trying to get going and get itself known in the communities, they had a thing where you could mail in your D&D 3.0 or 3.5 handbook, like your player's handbook, and they would send you an Exalted core book with the idea of like, don't play D&D, play this instead, it's better. D&D promises you can be a hero, but why would you just be some little knight going to do stuff for the king when you could be a lawgiver? But then it looks like you should be able to do that. The way that they're describing the charms, the way that they're like, oh yeah, like distance means nothing to you. You can automatically hit. It's a perfect attack. It's a perfect defense. You can see anything. You can sense magic. You could summon demons and elementals. Like it looked really cool when you're reading it. But then the storyteller is looking at it and wondering, what do I do with this? Like, how do I handle this? How do I present a challenge to my players? Or tell a story to my players when they can just crush every challenge that I put in front of them? And a lot of it comes down to the fact that it was built using, and is still actually using, the storyteller system, basically the old World of Darkness system. 3rd edition came out with some interesting tweaks. You can definitely look it up, but I mean, I would just find someone who can show you their book, because you don't want to give them money in their current state. Don't buy their products. But oh boy, like it's basically like setting up with Vampire the Masquerade's rule set, but you're chucking 18 to 25 dice at problems, and if your opponents are also using that many dice against you, then it's just rocket tag. And if they're not throwing that many dice against you, then victory is just a foregone conclusion. So what do you do? Like, how do you play with that? What is your goal? Like, what happens when you free all the slaves? What do you do then? Do you try to become the king? Do you what do you do? You have a great big sandbox, but there's a giant dirt pile over there, and you're like, all right, so like, why should we play here when we could just play over there? So it leaves players not really being sure what the point of it all is. They draw up this grand plot, or not even a plot, like a setting, where they have these larger-than-life characters that you're supposed to either look up to or try to be, but they're put into such a position and then given such inflated stats that you can't become them. You can't take their place. You can't defeat them. They're these insurmountable foes that White Wolf has a habit of adding to their games, where you really can't interact with them in any way other than a subservient manner, because they become your boss as soon as you go to meet them. It's, hey, cool, I'm glad that you visited me, a Death Lord. By the way, I have more essence than your entire group of players. I have seen long perfect defenses. Sure, I'm just a ghost, but I also have all of your charms. Just all of them. And I can cast all the magic. I can do everything. How do you run that as a storyteller? Like, you as a storyteller now need to know all of the charms in the book, or at least the pertinent ones, because otherwise that Death Lord forgot that they do a charm that would have gotten them out of a situation? What are we doing here, everybody? What is our goal? What do you guys think about that?
And this is something that kind of shows up a lot. And this is something I think is probably it's probably the thing that stumps people new to Exalted the most. People are generally smart enough that regardless of how non-Euclidean the mechanics are, people will eventually figure out how to physically play the game. But the actual issue comes in DMing it, figuring out how you're supposed to do this. Because let's be honest, there aren't very many games with the scale of Exalted. Exalted is a game about playing demigods, but Exalted doesn't really provide a guide to the DM on how to do a game where your players are literal demigods. How do you deal with that scale and potency of power? How do you create opposition that is both meaningful, narratively cohesive, and fun for the players? How do you avoid overdoing it and making NPCs that basically become super gods that can't be defeated by the players or get immediately crushed by the players? There's a lot of things that a skilled DM could probably circumvent, and there's Exalted has one of the most dedicated and loyal fan bases I've ever seen. There really are people that have a ton of fun playing this game, but they're all people who have figured out the God, my brain, that word. They're people who have figured out the quirks of the system. They're people who have figured out how to DM and run this and make it work. And almost all of them have a host of homebrew and small setting tweaks that they've implemented. And I really wish that Exalted came with a guide. Like, the first thing you read when you open up the book is a section for the prospective DM about what you're doing as a DM of this game. What are you doing? What even is happening? Like,
yeah, it's when I first got into Exalted, which was about a year ago, I bought the book, 3rd edition, and I opened the first page, and it was that massive story, a 4 or 5 page story. I started reading it. It went into Solar Exalted immediately. I'm like, you know what? No thanks. I shut the book, put it on my shelf, and I just went back to playing Godbound. A couple weeks later, I'm like, you know what? I'll give it another try. I start looking more into it, and I see the amount of charms, everything. I'm like, all right, this is something very new, especially a person coming from Godbound. And I'm like, so is there any monsters or antagonists, like that, or how do I DM this, really? And the only help that I could find was from the community themselves.
Yeah, like, a lot of the reason I enjoy Exalted is because I've interacted with people who are already into Exalted, who knew how to guide me through it. But if I was just using official setting material and published works, I would have no idea what I was doing or what I should be doing.
You shouldn't have your books so vague and incomplete that you actually have to rely on the fans to help you.
Yeah, like it almost becomes like this weird, like almost like you're being tutored. like it's like you need a kung fu master sometimes to figure out Exalted.
Yeah, I feel bad for the fans because like I've gone head to head with them at times where I'm telling them, like, listen, the Wild Hunt is not a good thing in this game, as it is stated. It becomes the fun police. The Wild Hunt is an organization that is run by the Empire in the center of the world and agents in heaven, and what it's supposed to do is basically fight off the monsters from beyond the world, including the Lunar Exalted, the face-stealing chosen of Luna that are in an eternal blood war with the realm in the center of the world. Nobody has any agency. It's just an eternal blood war, and if you're friends, then you'd better have a darn good reason, because boy, is everybody in the setting going to hate you. And it just amounts to a bunch of people who show up, or to the storyteller basically being told by the book, hey, once your players have saved enough villages and enough people have seen them be big heroes, then you need to have a bunch of these assassins show up with an army and attack them. It has to happen, because if it doesn't happen, well then, what's the Wild Hunt doing anyways? And I read that, and it just reads like the fun police. Okay, guys, the fun police has arrived. I guess this is the part of the game where we fight off the Wild Hunt. All right, we've either beaten the Wild Hunt, and I guess it's not a problem anymore? Question mark. Or okay, they killed us. Like, the assassins won. They showed up when we were at our weakest, and I guess do we even want to re-roll new characters, or we just want to go play Godbound? Or if only one character dies, then you run into the problem of, okay, I guess I'm just going to play on my phone for the rest of the night, because it's not like character creation is easy in this game.
Boy, do I feel like a hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this, all of this, like all of the stuff we've been saying, this kind of themes into something. Those of you that are familiar with White Wolf, and by extension, Onyx Path, because they both use a very interesting form of game design, and you see this in a lot of the stuff they make, be it like their Vampire the Masquerade, or Mage the Ascension, or Exalted. They have a lot of things that kind of show up in every game that almost everyone, including people in the fandoms of these games, kind of hate. But for some reason, every time a writer goes to write any system related to these, they kind of institute them just because of tradition, and partially because it's just how their Ivory Tower game design works. And there's a bunch of things that pop up in White Wolf games that are consistent, and they all kind of also pop up in Exalted, even in modern Exalted, because they're sort of strands of DNA that have been stuck in. The first is unbeatable NPCs. This shows up all over almost every White Wolf game. Like in Vampire the Masquerade, you have things like antediluvians or God forbid Cain, who I believe when someone asked them for stats, Cain's stats were listed as "fuck you, you lose."
Oh yeah.
Or one was the stats or something like that. Like it was basically like there's a lot of characters that are designed so that the players can't beat them.
Yeah.
This shows up in almost every White Wolf game.
And we even
we've did a whole episode on unbeatable characters. This pops up a lot. This is really a recurring theme with them. Is you see a lot of stuff like that, and this spreads to other things. Like there's always ticking clock dooms. Like in Exalted, it's called 1,000 Dooms, and basically the world is ending like 12 different ways at the same time. Like the Yozis are trying to reclaim the world. The Death Lords are trying to take over the world. Elemental dragons are going to wake up and blow up the world. I'm pretty sure the Scarlet Empress was going to do something that might end the world.
Well, if she comes back, then that means that Mama's home.
Yeah. Autochthon might do something crazy and end the world, because I don't know. It just like there's all these ticking clocks, and they create a situation where the players either have to go, we don't care, we'll let the world end while we're over here having fun, or players have to kind of obsessively stop the world from ending. And
come on, guys, let's go on a railroad.
Yeah.
Or the DM just goes, oh yeah, it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that is admittedly one of the good things about Exalted setting is a lot of the stuff, like for example, we don't like, is really easily pulled out of the setting, but they're generally like bad game design decisions as just to be put in at all. Like, okay, here's another thing. Everyone has to hate everyone. Like, every faction has to be painfully aggressive towards every other faction. Like, the Sidereals have to be trying to conquer the world or put everyone under their thumb. The Realm has to be at war with the other types of Exalted because
you have to
need
be, it's
opposition or something. The Lunars have to be at war with the Realm because the Lunars weren't intended to actually be player characters until like right before the book was released, so they just kind of went and threw them in. And it goes down the line. Like instead of you hating someone because they're of a certain ideology or a certain type of person, or they just robbed you and you hate them, or like narratives that come about as a result of things that happen between characters, there's a lot of, you're a blue person who glows, therefore I must kill you because you're evil.
Yeah, you're not...
And then add in, and I'm not even joking, that's see, the Realm practices like this thing called the Immaculate Faith, which is this objectively false religion that was put in place partially by the Sidereals and partially by the Terrestrials to get everyone to think that the Celestial Exalted are literal demons possessing people who are pure evil and are only acting good occasionally to trick people. And so all Celestial Exalted, other than Sidereals, who people either don't know exist or are working with, depending upon which rider you're with. All of them are, like, gotta be killed. And that's just, like, the position the realm takes. Like, you can't really be a Solar who's loyal to the realm, because the realm will just kill you. Mm-hmm. And they'll send people to murder you because you're a yellow person, and you're too magic and evil. So
well, you're shedding gold, or a color that isn't red, white, black, green, or what is it, blue. So, sorry. Now they have a spell, and I think it's called Flawlessly Impenetrable Disguise. That might be a solar charm. I cannot remember. But there is a spell, a sorcery spell. Everybody, including Dragon-blooded, can get it. It's a first level spell. And as part of that spell, you can disguise your anima flare. So you could just look like you're a Dragon-blooded. There you go. And people would do that. They'd be like, okay, I'll just disguise my anima banner as a Dragon-blooded, I guess. So how does that look when my cast mark should be flaring? Oh, I don't know. Like, what is that? Why do we have that? Why do you have to be this gold to rule, and why do you have to be one of these colors to be a hero, without having to go to these great lengths to explain why you're friends, why you're just a hero, like why you're just a good person? And like Exalted fans, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about all the reasons to apologize for this, it's fine. Like, I feel bad for you all for all of the work that you have had to do, because a lot of you have done some really cool things with this dumpster fire of a system. Like, just all the work that goes into running a game. Like, I am impressed by you all. Like, and I just feel bad that you feel like you have to defend a lot of just ball dropping that's going on with it. That's still going on with it. Like, it's okay. It's okay that the Empress is not an interesting character and does not do anything for any game ever, except act as an endgame catastrophe, a cataclysm. Oh no, the Empress has returned. Now she's using the Sword of Creation on us because, that's what she does. That is the only reason she is allowed to be the Empress, is because she can use the Doomsday weapon in the middle of the world. And I've heard somebody say, someone whose opinion I respect, and he's actually helped us out a little bit with writing some of the lore for our upcoming game, where he was saying that the Empress is supposed to be a character who has the button but doesn't use it. And that's why she's an interesting character. But when I read about the Empress, she did use it. I mean, she used it to save the world. She used it to stop the Fairfolk invasion and stop all of the world from being devoured by the things from beyond. But then she just became this weird tyrannical ruler that's also able to cast spells that are beyond her ability, and I think she's one of the few characters that isn't statted. Like, almost like the Unconquered Sun has stats. The Empress, as far as I know, does not have stats. And I feel like it's because she just doesn't matter. With all the word count that is spent on her, her job is to not be there, and because she's not there, everybody else, all of her kids, all of her family, the entire dynasty, the entire empire falls apart. A, because that's what empires do when the emperor leaves, but then it's written that as soon as she returns, everybody will go, oh, the Empress is back. Let's just fall back in line, like the little baby ducks we are, because none of us can have any agency. None of the Dragon-blooded can be heroes until the Empress is gone. And once she's permanently out of the picture, it gives them a chance to make decisions on their own without this threat of, okay, but what happens when Grandma comes home? what do we do then? It doesn't matter if you play a game on the Blessed Isle where, like, yeah, the Empress is gone, and now we're making our move. We're making a power move to take over this province, and we're going to make this a Naemon province. Officially, we will take down the Empire's flag. We will raise the flag of Naemon, and Naemon will rule this province. Well, okay, but what happens when the Empress comes back? It's still going to be a Naemon province. Like, we exercised agency. Deal with it.
The thing is, and this is something, like, this is my criticism. This is something that I kind of harp on a lot. I kind of feel like all the characters I want to be are NPCs you can't play as. Like, the Scarlet Empress, depending upon how you look at her, is an interesting character. But my thing is, I don't care about an NPC who's gone unless I'm playing the weird former Empress lady who's now on a quest to do something. Or someone who is so powerful that them just leaving for a few years causes a giant civil war because they're so important and so integral to this massive realm structure that without her direct intervention, it collapses within a few generations.
Not even a few generations. She left 5 years before the stated time of the game starting.
God, I forgot about that. Yeah, like 5 years, the place is about ready to explode. I want to be a character that's that cool. Or like the, what the heck are they called? Death Lords. They're like Emperor Palpatines, but there's a bunch of them, and they're all cool and individualistic, and they all have their own cool servants that run around. But the thing is, you don't play as the Death Lord. If you want to get that flavor, you play as the Abyssal, who is the Death Lord's servant. It's weird to me that this is a game about playing demigods and playing supervillains and superheroes. But the supervillains and superheroes are NPCs that are far stronger than the players will ever be, who also are either, like every time you run into them, you either begin working under them as a servant, or get 5 of your friends and genocide them. Because they're so powerful that's the only 2 ways that it can end when you interact with them at all. And it feels strange to me, why wasn't the game built with the assumption that you're playing characters like the Death Lords, individual people with agency and the ability to build all of this sway and this massive collection of power that kind of cracks the setting a little bit, which was sort of the point. But Exalted does a ton of work to make sure that it's really hard to break the setting.
Yeah.
But, the point is that you're a giant crazy hero who breaks the setting, but it also does things to make you not all that unique. Okay, you're a Solar, so you're the best thing ever. You and all, several hundred other Solars who are just as cool as you are. And then there's, the Lunars, and there's, 400 Lunars, and they're all just as cool. Well, they're supposed to be.
Well,
and then there's the Sidereals, and there's 100 of them, and they're doing things. And then there's the Dragon-Blooded, and there's 10,000 plus of them. And each of them is still supposed to be this hero. And it kind of feels like the entire world is so flooded with super beings that even if you're a Solar, and again, a good DM can minimize this, but I'm talking as the system as it is. It kind of feels like you're not special at all, and you're just one of literally thousands of other Exalted running around. And even if you, the game was built to not let you become as powerful. I kind of feel like there's a lot of characters that sound really cool that I would rather be other than an Exalt. Okay, first of all, there's the Scarlet Empress, who, even though she's a terrestrial Exalted, which in story is basically a much weaker exaltation than Celestial Exalted, I think she's the strongest Exalted in the setting, right? Insuling, she's the strongest Exalt.
She wasn't really ever given stats, and the Hearthstone for the Imperial Mance that she has does stuff, but and there's a reason. There's got to be a reason that the Sidereal Exalted, who are all like 8,000 years old or whatever, and endgame characters with a million XP that you can never be, that they haven't just shown up and slapped a slave collar, which is an item in Exalted. You can get a level 4 or 5 artifact that works on Exalted. It's right there. And as soon as I read that, I hit the chats and was like, hey, why doesn't Chejak or Kajak just show up at the Empress's room and be like, hey, Clink, cool, now we're going to whisk you away to heaven so we don't have to deal with you and catering to you, and if we need any assistance, then you can just come down and use the Sword of Creation as we need it. Because the issue is that the Sword of Creation can only be used by, I don't know, a full circle of Solars or something, and the Solar Exalted were, missing because they were trapped. But the Empress, turned it on with her magic story powers that are only half explained, kind of. Like, oh, the Sidereals asked for a miracle. And then the Empress came out, and they were like, yay! Except be careful what you wish for, maybe, because she doesn't exactly work with them all the time. I don't know, she's weird. I kind of hate her. I wish that they had given her the treatment that we gave her, because I love our treatment of the Empress. She was a hero in her time, but her time has passed, and the world has moved on. Just let her go. Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah. That's totally fair, though. Like, that's what I feel is this kind of weird thing, is Exalted, like, I can tell that the writers of Exalted, the people that originally made this lore, legitimately do care about this setting. There's so much work put into this setting. Like, really, despite all that we've done to tear this apart for this episode, I want to explain. Exalted is one of my favorite settings ever. It is so wonderful and creative. It's great. But I feel like sometimes being too in love with your setting can be a weakness. Because when you're in love with your setting, you have certain themes you want to keep going. And you have these characters you're in love with. And you have a habit of wanting to make sure that those characters are as cool on paper as they are in your head. And sometimes that doesn't leave room for the players. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, if there's all of these people running around with maxed out essences and scene-long perfect defenses, and just these people who are so much cooler than the player characters, the question is, why are we playing as Solars then, when I could play as a Death Lord and be way cooler and more of a, player character with agency? Or why aren't we playing this weird beefed up dragon blooded that apparently can happen because of the Scarlet Empress being a thing, or like all of this other stuff? Why aren't we doing that instead? And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that the people originally writing this were so in love with their setting, and I understand why. I'm in love with the setting. Mm-hmm. That they almost, and I don't even know if it's conscious, but they almost set up fail-safes to make sure that the players could never screw things up too bad in the setting. Like, it's kind of like a sandbox, but, like, the teachers are always watching to make sure that you don't pick up the sand and throw it out of the box because you don't want it there anymore. Like, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. Like, there's a certain play area set up for player characters with a lot of bigger, more important things happening at the periphery that the players either can't really do anything about or have to work as the assistants of the people who do know what's going on. Like, like with the Scarlet Empress, either you're working with her or you're working with one of the other super NPCs to destroy her if she's active.
The players are in the background while the NPCs are mainly in the front stage of some sort.
And I get why. Like, I understand why the writers would do this, because you can't create the player characters as characters in the setting. So you have to only rely on NPCs. So you try and make the setting as cool as possible, and you're going to get NPCs that have their own agency. And that's good. Having heroes and villains apart from the players is important. It's necessary. Mm-hmm. But I think that it doesn't feel like there's a gap, and there should be a gap for the player characters to slot into. Like they should be something that makes everyone pause and look at them. Because that's what you're doing. You're playing a hero who can make his mark on the world. Except for all of the things put in place to stop players from making their mark on the world.
You could look at Skyrim.
And it kind of feels...
Excuse me.
Yeah?
Hey, you can look at Skyrim for examples of why this is bad. I mean, Skyrim obviously came out well after Exalted. But, and like, we're using a lot of hindsight here. I'll just take a quick second and just say, yes, we're using a lot of hindsight. Writers who originally wrote for Exalted, some of you were great. Some of you definitely deserve an episode of your own for the bad reasons. But right now we're writing about the ones that we like. The people who did a good job and didn't, be gross, we love you. You did a good job of writing a rad setting. But when you hear somebody talk about their experience in playing Skyrim, it's oftentimes leads to, yeah, I was trying to do all this stuff in this sandbox that they set up, but everybody just keeps calling me a milk drinker, and occasionally the guards will come after me, and so I'll try to fight my way out, but then one of the people who's attacking me is invincible because they're involved in a quest later, and my sandbox won't let me kill them. Like, it's basically your teacher saying, no, the sandbox, the pail has to stay in the sandbox. You cannot take it out. And that's basically what a Deathlord is, because a whole circle of solars cannot kill a Deathlord in 2nd edition, guys. It can't happen. Because the book says it can't. It says, you cannot permanently kill them, even if you use Ghost Eating technique, which was the charm that's designed to kill ghosts, which... And it kills ghosts, it kills elementals, it kills gods, it kills everything. But not Deathlords. Oh no, you need the storyteller's permission to kill the Deathlord. No, don't do that. Take off the training wheels, guys. It's okay. Sorry again. I'm back. What was I saying? I just saw this weird color of pink for a little while.
And really, though, like, in Insuling, I really agree. I think that this is something that kind of pops up. Is there's a lot of, like, you can see the hand of the developer, but it kind of sometimes feels like it's a sledgehammer instead of a guiding touch.
They're not creating a novel, they're creating a system where it demonstrates freedom of choice.
Yeah.
D&D is all about doing whatever you want, with the help of your DM and other players. With Exalted, it's like they're trying to mix in with cool plot elements, but they do it poorly, and they make it so I don't want to play, or I'm going to have to spend all my time trying to fix everything, which we're doing right now.
Yeah. And you kind of get into this a lot, where there's like if we were to look at Exalted as a whole, there isn't really one big thing that stands out as its flaw. There isn't one big, this is why Exalted as a whole is this terribly flawed, beaten dead horse. There's a lot of small things, like little nitpicks. Like okay, here's one. The entire setting is written from the ground up as if everything is within walking distance of everything, and it makes it pretty much impossible to deal with the game's scope. Like, okay, so like factions and cities that are literally thousands of miles away from each other have trade wars. Even though, like, if you were to try to have your characters walk between those cities, it would be a journey to the west style epic because of how far away it is. But apparently they just have like trading caravans, dudes on camels, and they're just running through the woods for thousands of miles to out-trade each other.
Yeah.
And it's because the writers didn't... I'll be honest, the writers made a pretty cool setting. They kind of messed up with, like, the scope. Like, this is something that you get in a lot of demigod-level stories, is the idea of the journey. Like, with demigods, this is something you see come up constantly. The grand quest. It comes up a lot in fantasy, too, but, like, Journey to the West. It's all about the journey to the West. It's just a trip. It's a road trip. The characters are traveling for the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
and they're running into people. It's the perfect like state for an adventure to be in because it allows for the DM to introduce new things almost constantly. It's a very fluid state of play. And it's also literally everywhere in fiction. But Exalted has a ton of ways that completely bypass this. And it's weird because Exalted also goes to the point of banning things that break this. Like, Exalted doesn't allow for resurrection. Like, even though your Exalted characters could pick up a D&D character by the throat and rip him in half like it was nothing, a Exalted character is never going to bring dead people back to life. And he's never going to go back in time. Because these things were decided by the creators to kind of mess with the thematic elements of the fiction and the stakes and stuff. But they also have fast travel powers, like in Skyrim, where you just click a button or poke some magic, and you're on the other side of the planet. And it means, one, for DMs, there's absolutely no way to contain the players or even begin to guess where they're going to go, because the players can on a whim travel to the other corner of the world with a single spell. And you can get access to some of these spells at level 1. Or not level 1, but like the immediate state of entering the game. And that's it. Like, you can never have a story about a trip. You can never have any traveling problems unless the players are like marching an army through an area or something. But if it's just the players, they can just teleport everywhere. So everything becomes... It's basically like if you're going on the grand quest to kill the abyssal dude with the magic ring who's taken over the Middle Land or whatever, you just teleport to his house and gut him and then leave. You don't even leave, you just teleport back to your house.
I would say
rather
that
than
you're
going on
wrong.
the big epic quest.
I'd say you're wrong, but I've made a character who did that because they did actually add an item that actually teleports you. It's the Belt of Shadows. I think it's in Oednal's Codex, maybe? Or Wonders of the First Age. It doesn't matter. It's in one of those books. If you're an Exalted fan, you know what I'm talking about. It's a multi-level artifact, and if you take it at the highest level, then you can just teleport anywhere within 10 miles. So, you just use it to teleport in, kill the guy, and then teleport out. Alright, mission accomplished. That was fun. I mean, it is fun if you do it. Like, that was fun for me because for that character, I wanted to go rob somebody's store, and a storyteller had to give me 13 reasons why I couldn't. So I spent the whole time saying, like, yeah, but here's your tape. Anyway, I hate that show. Yeah, he just kept being like, well, they removed all of the doors. And I was like, okay, that's stupid because it's a store in the middle of town, but I could just teleport in. Oh, well, there's guards in there. Okay, well, I have the ability to see spirits and see through walls. So I just look for where the guards are and then go where they aren't. Oh, well, and it's just one thing after another. And it was really kind of a proud moment when they were just said, okay, listen, I'm just not going to let you do it. And I was like, okay, there you go. That's fair. Don't steal from another player. Granted, it was an online chat game, and basically everybody's an NPC because everybody just stands around talking about how much they like swords. If you were on those chats and you're listening to this, you know I'm right. But like man, where even were we? This has been fun. I like this. Let's take it off the tracks.
It's kind of cathartic.
Let's see.
We've been for viewers listening, we've been putting this episode off hardcore. Like, this was supposed to be the second Exalted video we did. We were supposed to do Exalted the introduction, Exalted the good, and then Exalted the bad. The reason we started covering the directions and then Godbound is because, I'll be honest, none of us wanted to do this episode because we legitimately love Exalted and don't really there's some level where it's kind of not that fun to just pick apart all the flaws of something you care about, but it's also kind of cathartic and satisfying to finally talk about all this.
Yeah, take enjoyment out of this, listeners.
I really do, because it can be frustrating when somebody's really trying to apologize for the system that is failing them. Because again, if you're a fan, I started on this before, and I think I've started on this like 2 or 3 times. If you're a fan, you're listening to this, I respect you, and I feel bad for you, because this system has basically tricked a lot of people into thinking that it's really good because the setting is well written. But then it just drops the ball. Like it says, here's the unconquered sun, and he's basically filling in for God or maybe Lucifer, because originally Exalted was supposed to be World of Darkness before it was the World of Darkness. But like, okay, here's the unconquered sun, and they wrote like, oh, the unconquered sun is perfect, and the unconquered sun fills all these virtues. But they wrote themselves into a corner because they have these awesome, larger-than-life NPCs that are literally the sun, the moon, and, the planets. But then, well, we can't have them doing anything, so what do we do? Oh, well, let's have them be addicted to a board game. They and a bunch of Muppets are going to be up in heaven. They're still supposed to be these really cool things, but, they're addicted to the games of divinity. Okay, why can't it just be the sun? Why can't the answer that the sun gives players who go to heaven and demand that the sun solve the problems just be, A, I'm busy being the sun, B, why don't you solve the problems? That's your job. Just go solve the problems. That's why I chose you.
It's this, and again, it's right now we are in the middle of not only redesigning the setting of Exalted, but also making a new Exalted system. So there is a little bit of bias here with us talking.
Yeah.
Because we've already redone massive sections of the setting and system. So we do again, it's really easy for us to fall into, subtly suggesting what we're already doing and then wait. Yeah. But this is something we did with the sun, is the sun in our version of Exalted is a legitimately good person. He is a hero. He wants what's best for humanity as a whole. He really does. He's not the embodiment of virtues that is this edgy, 90s era White Wolf thing where he's Satan plus God, maybe-ish, and he's also a crack addict for the games of divinity, and he also just doesn't care and turned his back on humanity for some reason. Who knows? No. He wants the world to be everyone to be happy and safe, because he's the embodiment of compassion. He's literally compassion. He is the living embodiment of the virtues. He is all that is right. At the same time, he's the sun. If he comes down to Earth, for a creation, for a second, everything within 10 miles of him bursts into flame and dies. Because he is physically the sun. When you look up at daytime in our version of creation, look at the sun, you're not looking at, his spaceship or a thing he's controlling. No. You're just looking into heaven and seeing the unconquered sun at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
That's him, physically him. Same thing with the moon. It's physically Luna.
Yeah, that's what they are. They're not a human form. When you talk to the sun, you are talking to the sun. And, that has problems. How do you look directly at the sun? It's not a case of, you can't look directly at him because, just reasons. It's no, you can't look directly at him because he's a giant nuclear furnace.
Yeah, and this is something that pops up a lot. The reason the unconquered sun doesn't just come down and fix people's problems is A, he already gave humanity the ability to fix their own problems by making Exalted, because again, he's a compassionate person. And B, if he leaves his place in heaven for a minute, the world implodes. It can't last. He can sort of leave for a little bit, leave spiritually or send part of himself out. But even then, he is, and again, this is in our version of Exalted, he is physically holding reality together. If he leaves his station in heaven, the music that keeps creation running becomes discordant, and catastrophes happen all across the world. Mm-hmm. During the Great Contagion, all of the sun, the moon, the stars, because parts of heaven came down to fight the Fae, and the planets came down and started physically fighting, taking actual forms and fighting. And that's also why most of creation is gone currently. because they left their post and all that is stopped being. And so that's our explanation for why the Unconquered Sun doesn't come down and fix everyone's problems. Like, if a group of players somehow broke into heaven, marched all the way through heaven, all the way to the Unconquered Sun, and got past all of the guards, all of the things that would try to stop him, and probably even just the Unconquered Sun just casually batting them aside, the question the Sun would ask them is, if they're strong enough to do this, why do they need his help? Like, if they're strong enough to get to him, and to actually strong enough that he can't just push them away instantly back to Earth or whatever, why are they bothering going to him? They're already cool enough to fix the world on their own.
Yeah, go have your own story. He'd even probably say that. Why are you here? Go have your own story. Make your mark on the world. It's yours to do with as you please. Why are you in my office? This has been good, guys. I feel good. I feel good about this.
Yeah. I'm happy to finally talk about this.
Like, I was worried...
I'm just happy to do an episode, really. Record an episode.
I didn't just want this to be a tired rant. I wanted this to be a good discussion of, like, just... Why did Exalted fail? Or why should Exalted have failed? And I do think that, in spite of all the reasons that we gave... Or I think that the fact that Exalted still has a strong fan base, and is still played as much as it is, and is still talked about today, in spite of all of its problems, is really it should be a pin in the hat of the writers who did it. And I'm sorry that they worked for White Wolf or later Onyx Path Publishing, because, you know, don't buy the books, because that money isn't getting to the writers who wrote the books. Like, if you want to give those writers credit, you know, look up the people who actually did the writing. It's right there in the books. I mean, you can just look at the what is it, like the cover page or whatever it's called, and it'll tell you the artists and all the writers. And
Page.
I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, it's like the first page, like on the bottom, usually it'll say writers, artists, developers, and that stuff.
Yeah, go try to look them up on Patreon and see what else they did. If they were involved in the Infernals book, don't give them any money. Especially the artist team. Especially the art manager. Ooh, he's lucky I don't have that book open right now. I would say his name 3 times and summon him here so I could tell him to... Welcome to Florida. Now get out of my apartment and go, you know, drown outside in the air because it's like 100% humidity out there with no rain.
You summon him just to tell him to go away.
Yeah, now walk home. You're going to do this when I get home, aren't you? Yes. Well, would you like a sample of my writing? Oh, God, no.
Yeah, I was talking to one viewer, I think, and he was talking about how he loved our videos because he could just watch them while he was listening to them while he was doing his flights.
Oh, that's cool.
It was really nice.
If you guys are on the Discord where we hang out, then, like, shout out to us. Be like, hey, I'm the guy from Hungary, or gal from Hungary, or I'm the person from Serbia. That's me. We want to know.
Let's move on right now.
Stoke our egos. Maybe it'll help me swallow my sadness faster so that we can get back to podcasting. To PodCon, or you know what? In 5 years, or within 5 years, I want us to be able to go to PodCon and answer other people's questions.
You know, I keep on hearing about PodCon. I just think it's, from what I'm hearing of, it's so like self-congratulatory.
Oh God! The thing is, almost
I'm
all
a podcast.
Yeah, almost like all conventions are especially conventions that are done by fans as opposed to the producers. You tend to see a lot of weird stuff crop up.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, we can.
After we end the recording.
Yeah, let's go ahead and close it out. I think our listeners hadn't heard enough of our bumbling around.
Yeah. Okay, listeners, so I think that we have really made our point, and I think we've said what we've wanted to say for this episode, and so now's the end. I have been Jarrett,
Arc.
And Insuling.
and we are the Podcast Cast. Thanks for listening.
See ya.
Bye.
Uh,